Okay, why wouldn't everybody have this gene? Well, because they go on to talk about you actually are less flexible. Okay, I want to talk about muscles and training and genetics for a few episodes. And, I'm doing 3 DNA consults today where I'm looking at people's 23andMe data, their ancestry data, that sort of thing. And I'm helping them figure out what the best training protocols are, what the best diet protocols, health risks, what kind of health issues they have, how their genetics impact that, how can they fix those problems, all this sort of thing. And one of the powers of knowing your genetics is knowing the best way to train. And today I want to give you an example of that and kind of help you, if you have 23andMe data, to understand whether you're maybe more of a sprinter, explosive movement kind of person, more of an endurance person, based on just one gene. Now there's a lot of other genes. I've got a paper here, for example. It's in the Journal of Science and Medicine in Sport, published in 2018. It's called 9 Genetic Polymorphisms Associated with Power Athlete Status, and it's a review paper. They're reviewing 35 articles over 5,000 power athletes, and from 2008 to 2016, and they found 9 important genetic SNPs, these things that 23andMe looks at. One of them is called ACE, ACE, and I'll probably do an episode on that one, separate. One of them is called ACTN3. That's the one I want to talk about today, alpha-actinin 3. And I've got a guy I'm doing 3 genetic consults today. One of the guys I'm doing coming up here, he's got his alpha-actinin 3 status. Let me just find it. It's the RS code. If you're going to Google it, it's RS1815739. He's got the CC version, which is like the sprinting version. It's the power version. So another one, so that's alpha-actinin 3. Another one is AGT. Another one is IL-6. That's an inflammatory protein. Another one is SOD, a different version of SOD. Those are also related to oxidative stress, so basically recovery. One of them is nitric oxide synthase 3, NOS3. So that's related to blood pressure, as is the first one, ACE, the first one I mentioned. So basically, how can you power up your body to explode from the gate if you're sprinting, or explode if you're pressing something? But today I want to talk specifically about muscle fiber types. And ironically, we all have, the type 1, the type 2A, the type 2X. We all have the same muscle fiber types genetically. That doesn't change. But there's a protein called alpha-actinin 3 in your fast muscle fiber types that you can either have or you don't have. Let's talk about it. Frontiers in Physiology. I've got a paper here. It's a mini review. It's another review paper, 2017. It's called ACTN3. That's the gene name for alpha-actinin 3. More than just a gene for speed. So people know of this gene as a gene for speed. If you've got the plus version, you've got 2 copies of DNA in your body. And if you've got a gene from your dad and a gene from your mom that are plus for this, then you've got an abundant amount, and you're more explosive. You're maximally explosive in terms of your muscle fiber types, the ability to ratchet for those muscles. So they talk about it. They say alpha-actinin 3 is a protein expressed only in type 2 muscle fibers. The XX genotype, meaning the minus version, differs across ethnic groups, with approximately 25% of Asians. They have the minus and they don't have the alpha-actinin 3. 18% of Caucasians, 11% of Ethiopians, 3% of Jamaicans, etc. Basically, if you have the minus version, you don't even make alpha-actinin 3. You don't even have it. So you can't ratchet the muscles faster. So those people oftentimes are more of the endurance types because they've just trained that way through their whole life. Elite sprint athletes have significantly higher frequencies of the plus version, of the CC version. So in other words, if you've got 2 copies of this gene, you have more alpha-actinin 3. If you only have 1 copy, by the way, you still can make this protein. You can still explode. But then again, one of the copies of DNA, we have 2 copies. 1 copy is making it, and 1 copy is not. And this is where epigenetics is really important, because these marks on your DNA can methylate the DNA for the copy that doesn't make it and shut that one down and just use the copy that makes alpha-actinin 3. I know it's complicated, but in other words, you can, just based on your lifestyle, you can communicate to your cells to make this explosive movement protein. That's important. So in other words, even if you just have a plus minus, it pretty much gives you the same benefits. It can give you the same explosive movement as a plus plus. But anyways, they say one of the most promising genes in regard to power athletes, gene for speed, alpha-actinin 3. They've looked at 19 studies exploring this gene. There's a tentative consensus, they say, among scientists, that this gene enhances improvements in strength, protection from eccentric training-induced muscle damage and sports injury. Okay, why wouldn't everybody have this gene? Well, because they go on to talk about you actually are less flexible. You have less abilities less flexibility. So there's probably more injury related to that if you've got alpha-actinin 3. So if you've got the gene, you want to stretch more. If you've got the gene, you want to focus on those eccentric movements. Incorporate that into your training. So obviously I'm not a fan of jumping right in and way overlifting and pushing your body too much and getting sore the next day. I'm a fan of slow progressive overload where you're slowly adding weight week after week. And then when you start getting to a point where you're actually challenging yourself, you're still not necessarily sore, but you're really challenging yourself, then you can do these eccentric movements where you put the safety bars, like say you're going to bench press, right? You put the safety bars just barely below your chest and you have the bar up high, racked. You put a bunch of weight on, more weight than you can actually bench press, just a little bit more, and you actually just take it and you just lower it down as slow as you can. Now obviously eventually you're going to hit those safety bars, they're just above your chest, boom, and then you slide out from underneath the bar, take the weights off, put it back up and do it again. That's an eccentric movement training pattern. You can do that with anything. You can do that with squats as long as you've got the safety bars. You can do that with pull-ups by putting, having a weight belt and then standing up on a stool, grabbing onto the bar at chin level and then slowly letting yourself go down. Or even body weight, right? If you can't do a pull-up, that's a great way to learn how to do a pull-up by just doing the eccentric movement, especially if you've got this gene. And other things. You can imagine there's a number of different ways you can do it. Eccentric movement, that's the way down, right? It's not when you're pulling the weight up, it's when you're letting it down slowly. The important thing, I think, is another addition to that, isometrics, where you just hold the bar in place or you hold the movement in place. Like say you're doing a push-up, at the very bottom of the push-up, you get off the floor just a little bit and you just hold it there. Your muscles are under tension. They're actively ratcheting. The myosin and actin, they're actively ratcheting, they're actively working. In physics, the equation for work is movement, distance, times mass, I think. So in other words, you have to move something, but in your muscles, they're actually moving, they're ratcheting, even if you're holding still. So isometrics are also a very good training pattern if you've got this gene, alpha-actinin 3. And the way you do isometrics is similar. You put those safety bars on the bench press and you just hold the bar just a little bit above that and just hold it for 15 or 30 seconds. Don't go too long or you increase your blood pressure. You have high blood pressure for a long time. It's not good. But 15 and 30 seconds, that's good. Isometric hold and then let it back down on the safety bar and do sets of that. It'll really make people look at you strange in the gym, which is also awesome because that improves your ability to not care what people think. So you're practicing mental toughness and you're practicing physical toughness. So, both of those things are also good for getting over plateaus. When you hit certain plateaus and you can't seem to get past a certain weight, yeah, you can deload and then work back up to it. Deload 10%, work back up. But sometimes eventually you still can continue to hit plateaus. Eccentrics and isometrics, along with stretching, if you've got this gene, super important. We'll talk about other workout-related genes and strategies in the upcoming episodes.